You think grief breaks you once, but sometimes it keeps breaking you in new ways, again and again until you don't even recognize the silence anymore. I lost my husband to a heart attack on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday night, my parents had already decided it wasn't about love. It was about logistics. This is the story of how I buried the man I loved and uncovered the truth about the family I thought I had. If you've ever been abandoned when you needed someone most, this story might feel familiar. And if not, I hope it reminds you just how much strength it takes to stay standing. I remember that morning like it was pressed in amber, forever glowing, forever still. Nathan stood in our kitchen flipping pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, wearing that worn gray hoodie that always made him look like a college kid again. The light through the window caught the specks of flour on his sleeves. He hummed some ridiculous tune, something from an old cartoon Sophie loved. "I want a stegosaurus today, Daddy," she chirped, bouncing on her toes. "You got it, Captain," he said, giving her a mock salute. "One stegosaurus extra syrup." I was at the counter, slicing strawberries, watching them like I always did, like I was outside time. Packing Sophie's lunchbox felt like ritual sandwich cut into Star's juice box. One sticky note from me, one silly joke from Nathan. He insisted she carry laughter to school. Nathan leaned over, kissed my cheek. "Out of the good syrup," he whispered dramatically. "Don't let the corn syrup touch her royal pancakes." "I'll pick it up after drop-off." I smiled, wiping jam from his chin. "You're impossible." "I'm irreplaceable," he winked. And just like that, he was out the door with a travel mug and a kiss on both our foreheads. "Be good today, my girls. I'll be home early for the art show." Those were the last words he ever said to me. At 10:47 a.m., my phone rang. The name Julia Reyes blinked on the screen, Nathan's assistant. Her voice was trembling. "Emily, it's Nathan. He collapsed during a meeting. The paramedics are here. They're taking him to Northwestern Memorial." I dropped my coffee mug, its shattered ceramic exploding on the kitchen floor. I didn't pick it up. My hands were already dialing Grace, our neighbor. "Can you pick up Sophie from school?" I said, barely breathing. "Something's happened to Nathan. I need to get to the hospital now." The drive was a blur of screaming inside my own skull. I think I ran 2 red lights. I don't remember. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my palms went numb. I remember whispering, "Please God, please not him. Please not today, not like this." But I was too late. The ER nurse met me with a look I will never forget, gentle, prepared, final. "Mrs. Bennett." I didn't need her to say anything else. Still she did. "He went into cardiac arrest. They tried everything. I'm so sorry." They let me see him. He looked like he was napping on a bad day. His jaw-slack shirt cut open a line of tape across his chest where the paddles had failed. I touched his cheek. "Come back," I whispered. "Please, just come back." But the only answer was the mechanical whir of a machine somewhere behind me. His skin was still warm, but the warmth was leaving fast. That afternoon, I sat in my car outside Sophie's school. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to be the person who said that kind of thing to a child. She ran up to the car waving an art folder. "Mommy, I made a painting of us with Daddy. It's for the show tonight. He's still coming right." I pulled over before I could speak. "Sophie." My voice cracked. Something happened. Her smile fell instantly. "Where's Daddy?" I turned around, took her hands. "He got really sick today, at work. His heart stopped working. But doctors can fix it, right?" Her eyes went wide with hope. "No, sweetie. This time, they couldn't." She stared at me for a long second. "Does that mean he's not coming back?" I nodded. She let out a sound I didn't know children could make. A raw animal sound. She threw herself into my lap, her whole body shaking. "I want Daddy, please, Mommy. Please." All I could do was hold her and cry. That night, after I got her to sleep, clutching Nathan's shirt like it was a blanket, I sat on the bathroom floor and broke. I shook. I screamed. I bit down on a towel so Sophie wouldn't hear. Then I did something I thought would bring comfort. I called my parents. My mother picked up on the 5th ring. Laughter and clinking glasses in the background. "Emily, can I call you back? We're celebrating your sister's birthday." "Mom," I could barely breathe. Nathan's gone. He died this morning. Heart attack. Silence. Then a slightly annoyed tone. Oh, Emily, are you sure maybe there's been a mistake? I saw his body, Mom. Well, this is shocking, she said, her voice not matching the words. But we're in the middle of dinner. Can we come tomorrow? I blinked. I just told you my husband died. I know, sweetie. It's just everyone's here and the caterers. Then my dad got on. Emily, I'm so sorry to hear this. Was Nathan's life insurance policy up to date? That's when I realized I wasn't just grieving the love of my life. I was about to grieve something else, something worse. I stayed on the bathroom floor long after the phone call ended, long after the silence returned, and the tears dried on my skin like salt crust. The tiles were cold beneath me, but the ache in my chest burned like fire. Nathan wasn't coming back. His laughter, his warmth, his morning pancakes, all gone. What stunned me most wasn't his absence. It was theirs, my own parents. I had begged for comfort, whispered his name through sobs, and my mother had told me to wait until after a birthday dinner. My father asked about life insurance before I could even form the words, he's gone. I should have expected it. A lifetime of favoritism toward Olivia should have prepared me for this. But nothing prepares you for realizing in your most shattered hour that the people who raised you are incapable of holding your grief. I didn't call back. Instead, I stared at the screen as messages came flooding in from people who didn't owe me anything. Julia Reyes, Nathan's assistant, Emily. I'm so sorry. Nathan was more than a boss. He was the heart of the office. Please let me know how I can help. Grace Miller, our next-door neighbor. Do you want me to pick Sophie up tomorrow too? And stay a while? You shouldn't be alone. Jennifer, my old coworker, I just heard. I can't believe it. Please let me know if you need company or meals or anything. Their words were gentle, sincere, far more than what I'd received from my own flesh and blood. There was a knock at the door. It was Grace. She didn't say a word, just held up a warm casserole and walked in. She placed it on the kitchen counter and pulled out 2 spoons. Sit, she said, not unkindly. And I did. We sat in silence for 10 minutes, maybe more. Just 2 women sharing space where the noise of grief hung louder than any conversation. Do you want me to stay the night? Grace asked. I shook my head. Thank you, but I need to be with Sophie. She nodded, then reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You're not alone, Emily. Not really. Later that night, I climbed into bed beside Sophie. She had fallen asleep clutching Nathan's shirt, his favorite light blue button-down. It still smelled like his cologne and faintly like coffee. Her lashes were wet. Her tiny hand rested on the chest where his heartbeat used to lull her to sleep. At 3:12 a.m., she bolted upright. Her scream pierced the room like a knife. I want Daddy. Where's Daddy? I pulled her into my arms instantly. He's here, baby, in your heart. He never leaves there. She sobbed into my chest until sleep found her again. But I stayed awake, staring into the dark, listening to the hum of a world that didn't pause, not even for death. Morning sunlight was cruel. It poured through our kitchen window like any other day. But nothing was ordinary anymore. There were no pancakes, no coffee cups, side by side, no humming from the bathroom. Just quiet. I brewed coffee I didn't drink. I stared at the funeral pamphlet left by the director next to the list I'd scrawled in pencil. Marcus Nathan's brother, Julia assistant, Brian college roommate, Pastor Lucas, Lily's school counselor. Each name felt like reopening a wound. Every call I'd make would be someone else's first heartbreak. The phone rang again. It was Mom. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Emily, your father and I need to know what time the funeral is. We're trying to coordinate with Olivia and the caterer. The funeral is Saturday, 10 a.m. at Whitehaven Chapel. Do we need to wear black? Or is it one of those celebration of life things? I swallowed bile. It's a funeral, Mom, for my husband, who died 2 days ago. Well, I just want to dress appropriately. We'll be there. Do you want us to bring anything? I almost asked her to bring her heart. But what would be the point? Just yourselves, I said flatly. She hung up after a quick, all right then, as though we'd just scheduled brunch. I stared at the wall for a long time, wondering how 2 people could create life but forget how to be human. That evening, I asked Sophie, sweetheart, would you like to help me choose what Daddy should wear? She nodded solemnly. The the blue shirt, the one he wore in our Christmas photo. He said it made him look like a superhero. My throat closed up. Okay, baby, we'll give him his superhero shirt. She laid her head on my lap. Will he be warm? I smiled gently through the ache. Always. He's surrounded by love. The morning of Nathan's funeral was heartbreakingly beautiful. The sky was the softest shade of blue clouds, few and perfectly painted. Birds chirped cheerfully outside my window, like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't lost someone irreplaceable. It was obscene almost. The sun shouldn't shine on a day like this. Sophie stood silently by the mirror in her room wearing the blue chiffon dress Nathan had picked for her birthday last year. He used to call her his little sky princess when she wore it. Now she wore it to say goodbye to him. I want the white flower clip, she said barely above a whisper. I nodded, retrieving it from her jewelry box. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it twice. She didn't say anything, just watched eyes too old for her age. I tried to braid her hair the way Nathan used to. He was better at it than me. My fingers fumbled, my breath caught. But I did it. Slowly, carefully, like it mattered which it did. It was the last time she'd ever wear something for Daddy. We arrived early, almost an hour before the service. I needed space to breathe, space to sit in silence before the flood of people, the looks, the murmured condolences. The funeral home smelled like lilies and polished wood. It felt too clean, too neutral, too quiet. But the weight of what it held made the air feel heavy. Nathan's co-workers were the first to arrive, men and women in somber suits, heads bowed eyes, swollen from early tears. Each one shared something, an email Nathan had written late at night to reassure a stressed-out client, the time he brought coffee for the whole team after a brutal quarterly review. One by one, they spoke to Sophie like she mattered, like she was still tethered to her father through memory. Then Marcus walked in. He looked wrecked. My brother-in-law had flown overnight from Tokyo, arriving barely 2 hours before. He hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, his face hollow. But when he saw Sophie, something shifted. He dropped to one knee. "Hey, Jellybean." She ran to him, burying her face in his chest, his arms wrapped around her like armor. I blinked back tears. That's when my phone buzzed. "Mom running late. Traffic is insane. Olivia couldn't find matching shoes. We'll be there ASAP." I stared at the message, numb. They arrived 20 minutes into the service. The front doors creaked. Heads turned. Shoes clicked on hardwood. My parents, dressed in stark black, entered like guests, arriving late to a wedding they barely remembered. Mom smoothed her hair. Olivia muttered something that made her chuckle. My father waved awkwardly to someone seated in the back. They took the front row, the row I had saved for them, as if nothing was out of place. I didn't look at them again. When I rose to speak, I thought my legs might fail me. But then I saw Sophie, sitting in the second row, holding Marcus's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. I saw the women Nathan had worked beside the old man from our corner store, even the coach from Sophie's soccer team. They all came. He was everything good in one person. I began. He laughed like he didn't care who heard. He burned pancakes and still called himself a breakfast chef. He gave more than he had every single day. A soft collective chuckle warmed the air. He learned to braid Sophie's hair just so I could sleep in on Saturdays. He never missed a doctor's appointment or a school project or an art show, even if he didn't understand the art. Another soft laugh. And he loved with his whole heart, without conditions, without keeping score. That's why it hurt so much to say goodbye. My eyes flicked briefly to the front row. My mother dabbed at dry eyes. My father checked his watch. The reception was at our house. Grace and a few friends had helped set it up. The front room was filled with flowers and finger food, the soft hum of piano music playing in the background. Nathan's team brought wine. His parents brought framed photos. I brought my exhaustion. I barely noticed my parents until I heard their voices laughing, mingling. They sat comfortably on my couch, sipping wine, accepting condolences, as though they were the center of loss. Olivia took selfies in the hallway mirror. I retreated to the kitchen. Then I heard it. My father near the drinks table, speaking in that low, calculating tone I knew too well. Well, with Nathan's salary and insurance, she'll be more than comfortable. Add in the investments, and Rachel's practically set for life. My blood turned to ice. I peeked around the corner. He was speaking to Uncle James, who nodded knowingly. "It's a substantial estate," James muttered. "It'd be smart for them to invest it, of course." Diversify. I had to grip the counter to keep from throwing the wine glass in my hand. Nathan hadn't been dead 48 hours, and they were already talking numbers. Already calculating my worth now that I was widowed and paid. I closed my eyes, heart pounding. It was never about grief for them. It was always about what came after. Back in the living room, Sophie sat between Marcus and Nathan's mother, Diana. She held a small plate of Strawberry's legs, swinging silently. Diana caught my eye. Her face was soft with concern. "She's been so strong," she said. "She shouldn't have to be," I replied. Diana came to me then, arms wide, and held me so tightly I nearly crumbled. "We'll stay tonight," she whispered. "You shouldn't face this first night alone." I didn't say thank you. I didn't need to. I just nodded into her shoulder, because deep down something had clicked. Nathan was gone, but I wasn't alone. It just wasn't the people I expected who stayed. 2 weeks had passed since Nathan's funeral, and the silence in our house had changed. It was no longer full of grief alone, but of adjustment, of trying. Sophie had returned to school. Her teachers sent gentle updates. "A little quieter than usual," one wrote, "but she smiles when we talk about art." I spent most mornings at the kitchen table surrounded by papers I didn't want to understand: medical bills, insurance documents, estate notices. Nathan had handled these things. Now they were mine, cold, sterile, coded in financial jargon. That's where I was, pajamas unwashed, hair heart hollow, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw them, my parents, Carol and Brad. I hadn't spoken to them since the funeral. They had sent one text after "let us know if you need anything." I hadn't replied. Now they were standing on my porch like they had every right to be here. I opened the door, not bothering to hide the surprise in my face. Emily Mom smiled tightly, stepping forward as if she owned the space. "We were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by." My father adjusted his collar. "Is Sophie at school? Good. We'd love to chat." My stomach twisted. That phrase, "we'd love to chat," never meant anything good in our family. They sat stiffly on the living room sofa like guests at a job interview. I made coffee out of politeness, my hands trembling as I placed the mugs on coasters. So I said, crossing my arms, "What is it?" Mom exchanged a glance with Dad. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, like he was preparing to present a business plan. "Emily," he began, "we wanted to talk to you about your financial situation." I said nothing. Mom jumped in all feigned concern. Now that Nathan's gone, things must feel uncertain. We understand how hard this is. Actually, I said slowly, Nathan left things very organized. He planned ahead. My father nodded, clearly expecting that. That's good. That's very good. Nathan was a smart man, and we know he had a sizable life insurance policy. My chest tightened. He continued, unbothered by the sudden shift in my expression. "Your mother and I have had some challenges since the last market dip. Our retirement took a hit, and with healthcare costs, well." I blinked. "Are you asking me for money?" Mom looked down at her coffee cup. Dad didn't flinch. "We thought, given the size of the payout, that it would be fair to consider sharing some with family. After all, we helped you get your start, college tuition, the down payment on your first house." I stared at them, completely numb. "How much are we talking about here?" My father brightened. "We were thinking 50%. That would cover our long-term needs and still leave plenty for you and Sophie. 50% of the insurance Nathan left to protect me, to raise our daughter, to secure her future." I tried to speak, but nothing came out. "Don't be emotional," Emily Mom added softly. "We're family. We supported you all your life. It's your turn to support us." I stood. Slowly. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from fury. "You didn't even show up when I needed you," I said, voice low and even. "You stayed at Olivia's birthday party. You walked in late to Nathan's funeral. You've never once asked how Sophie is." "That's not fair," my mother began. "No," I snapped. "What's not fair is burying my husband and then being asked to split the money meant to raise our daughter with the people who couldn't even bother to hold her when she cried." Dad stiffened. "We're just asking for what's right. We gave you everything. You owe us this." I felt something break, some last thread of filial loyalty I hadn't realized I was still clinging to. You raised me, I said coldly. Yes, and now you're trying to cash that in like a debt. But Nathan isn't your lottery ticket. His death isn't your retirement plan. Emily, don't be dramatic, Dad said. Get out! The words exploded from me louder than I expected. Get out of my house. They both froze. Emily, Mom reached for me. Don't touch me. I stepped back, tears finally burning down my face. You don't get to come here and rob my daughter's future. You don't get to pretend this is love. You weren't there when he died. You weren't there when she screamed for her father in the middle of the night. And you sure as hell aren't here for anything but yourselves. You'll regret this, Dad hissed, standing up. No, I whispered. I regret ever thinking you'd choose love over money. I opened the door. Leave and don't come back. They walked out slowly, stunned. No shouting, no slamming, just silence. But not the right kind. The wrong kind of silence, the kind that follows betrayal. I closed the door and leaned against it, the weight of their greed pressing on my chest like a stone. Upstairs, the house creaked gently as if exhaling. And I knew this wasn't over. After lunch, we sat together on the back porch. It was one of those early spring days when the wind is cold but the sun is warm. Sophie tucked her knees up to her chest and stared out at the yard for a while. Then very quietly she asked, Mommy, can I ask something hard? My chest tightened. Of course. At the funeral, did Grandpa say something about Daddy's money? I froze. My heart sank to my stomach. What do you mean? She looked down. I was near the table with the lemonade. Nobody saw me, but I heard Grandpa say something to Uncle James. He said, they'll get a lot of money now that Nathan's gone. I closed my eyes. Is that true? I sighed, trying to find the words. Yes, sweetie. When someone dies, especially when they were working and had insurance, it helps the family left behind. Daddy wanted us to be okay. She paused, fidgeting with her sleeve. So, are people only nice when there's money? No, baby. Not the people who really love you. But Grandpa and Grandma didn't come help you when you cried. They only came to ask for money. Right. The bluntness of her words hit harder than anything my parents said. Yes, I said. That's what happened. That evening, Sophie handed me the drawing she'd been working on. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a list. She had titled it in her neatest handwriting, Bill for Being a Real Family. Underneath were 6 hand-drawn boxes. Each had a caption in crayon. Came when Daddy died. Hugged Mommy when she cried. Asked me how I felt. Brought food. Stayed the night with us. Loved us without asking for money. And below it, written in bold, total OWED at $0. She'd drawn a big red heart next to the words, Daddy already gave us everything we need. I stared at it, hand covering my mouth. Tears spilled silently down my cheeks. Sophie, I whispered, why did you make this? She shrugged. I wanted them to see what they earned. Daddy always said people should know what they're really worth. I kneeled and pulled her into my arms. Daddy would be so proud of you. She hugged me back tightly. Can I give it to them? I paused, and then I nodded. Yes, but not today, when the time is right. That night, after Sophie went to sleep, I took the drawing and pinned it to the refrigerator right beside the last photo we'd taken with Nathan at the lake. He was laughing in it, sunlight in his hair, arms wrapped around both of us. That photo used to break me. But now, beside Sophie's fearless truth, it gave me strength. Because the battle ahead wasn't over. But I wasn't alone in it anymore. Even if my shield was only 8 years old and carried crayons. Sunday came like a storm cloud, not with thunder, but with the weight of something you knew would break something else. My father had demanded a family meeting. Not invited, not suggested. Demanded. His text read, This concerns all of us. Be at the house by 2:00. Bring Sophie. I almost ignored it. Almost deleted the message and let silence answer for me. But then I looked at the drawing still pinned on the fridge. Sophie's bill for being a real family. And I realized maybe this meeting needed to happen, not for their sake, but for ours. To finish it, to cut the final tie, to say out loud what I would no longer accept. We drove in silence most of the way. Sophie held the envelope tight in her lap, her hands small but strong. I glanced over. Are you sure you want to do this? She nodded. Daddy would. Her words hit me like they always did, simple, true, impossible to argue. We pulled into the driveway of the house I'd grown up in, a place that once smelled like cinnamon and old books. Now it just looked hollow. I rang the bell and the door opened almost immediately. My mother stood there in a pale pink cardigan, her smile strained. "Emily, Sophie, come in." We stepped into the living room where everyone was already seated. My father, Olivia, Uncle James, Aunt Rita, even Cousin Michael. Like a tribunal. Like I was being tried for loving the wrong man too fiercely and daring to survive his death. "Let's get right to it," my father said, standing. He handed me a document, a printed spreadsheet with numbers, breakdowns, highlighted boxes. "This is a fair plan," he began. "We've outlined a distribution that considers past investments we've made in your life and future family obligations." I stared at the paper. 65%. That was the total suggested allocation they expected me to surrender. To them, to Olivia, to people who didn't show up for the hardest day of my life. I didn't speak. I simply folded the paper and placed it on the table in front of me, and then I turned to Sophie. She stepped forward, still holding her envelope. Her voice was steady, clear. "I brought something, too." Everyone turned startled. Sophie walked over to my parents and handed them the envelope. My mother looked confused. My father opened it cautiously. Inside was the drawing, the same one I'd found on the fridge. Bill for being a real family. With every unchecked box, with every unpaid act of love, with a big red heart and the words "total owed $0, and below it in bold, "You don't get to ask for something you never gave." The silence that followed was different than before. Not cold, not angry, just exposed. Sophie stood there, hands behind her back, brave as a soldier. "I heard what you said at the funeral," she said, "about the money. I thought funerals were for love, not math." My mother looked as if she might cry. My father opened his mouth, closed it again. For once, he had no script. I stood up beside my daughter. "We're done here," I said. "You said this meeting was for the family, but I brought mine with me." Olivia rolled her eyes. "This is dramatic." "No," I replied. "What's dramatic is thinking Nathan's death was a payday." My father's voice finally found its footing. "You're being emotional. Think practically. This is about legacy." "No," I said again. "This is about boundaries, and mine is here, right now." Sophie looked up at me. I smiled at her. "Let's go." We turned. No one tried to stop us. No one called out. And I didn't look back. The fallout came faster than I expected. Within hours of us walking out of the family meeting, my phone lit up like a storm system. Dozens of texts from my mother. "You've embarrassed us in front of the whole family. I raised you better than this. Don't punish us for grieving differently." From my father. "You're being manipulated by that child. You think you're strong, but you're short-sighted. We were trying to protect legacy. This is your last chance to make things right." Even Olivia chimed in. "You've always played the victim. Grow up." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I refused to waste them. Instead, I stared at the ceiling that night while Sophie slept beside me, wondering how many times I'd made excuses for them throughout my life, how many red flags I'd folded into napkins of politeness. The next day, they left voicemails. I didn't listen, but I read the auto-generated transcripts. "Ungrateful, disrespectful. You'll regret this when you're older." Regret. What I regretted was giving them access to my grief in the first place. 3 days later, Marcus came back. He showed up without warning, just a knock on the door, then him standing there in jeans and a worn backpack, his arms open. "Thought I'd make good on my promise," he said. "Nathan asked me to be your net if he ever wasn't here to catch you." I hugged him tighter than I thought I could hug anyone again. Sophie squealed and ran into his arms. He stayed. No questions asked. He cooked dinner, cleaned dishes, sat with Sophie doing homework, sat with me in silence when I didn't want to speak, when I cried watching a shampoo commercial, when I laughed too hard at a memory and then broke into sobs mid-giggle. He just stayed. That night, after putting Sophie to bed, he sat across from me at the kitchen table with something in his hand, a faded white envelope. Nathan's handwriting. "For Emily, now if I'm gone." I froze. He gave this to me a few months ago, Marcus said. Made me promise to wait. He said if you were strong enough to walk out of a room full of wolves, then you were ready. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter wasn't long, but it felt infinite. My love, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. I want to start by saying I'm sorry for not telling you everything about the doctor's warnings. I didn't want fear to take root in our home. I wanted love to win. I've arranged everything I could think of to make sure you and Sophie are secure. The policies, the accounts, the trust, it's all structured with only you and her in mind. No one else. I know your father will come sniffing. He asked me twice while I was still alive. I said no. You must too. Family isn't blood. Family is who stands beside you when the floor gives way. Trust those who sit with you in the dark, not those who ask for a share when the lights come back on. Don't let them guilt you, and don't let them near Sophie's heart again until they've earned the right. I'm so proud of the woman you are, the mother you've become, the storm you carry without breaking. I loved you from the moment you corrected my chalkboard math, and I'll love you until you've finished every page we never got to write. Then, I wept into the paper. Not loud sobs, the quiet kind that come when something inside finally exhales after being clenched too long. Marcus didn't say anything, just sat there like Nathan would have waiting for me to come back to earth. Later, I went out to the porch. Sophie joined me curling up beside me with her sketchbook. We sat like that a long while, no talking, no music, no urgency. Just a mother and daughter side by side letting the night do its quiet work. I looked down and saw what she was drawing. A new list. This one was titled, People Who Stay. She'd drawn Marcus, Grace, Diana, Robert, Julia, and me. She glanced up. Is it okay if I put Daddy in the middle? My throat closed, always. She shaded him in gold crayon, then drew a heart around all of us. And for the first time since Nathan died, I didn't feel outnumbered anymore. The letter stated that my family, specifically, my father believed I was not acting in the best interest of the extended family and had shown financial recklessness and emotional instability since Nathan's death. They were requesting the court reevaluate the estate distribution due to prior familial investments and contributions toward the creation of the marital foundation. I laughed bitterly. Contributions like staying at a birthday party when their daughter lost her husband. Marcus looked at me, his voice calm but steel-lined. We need Thomas. That afternoon, we met with Thomas Hale, Nathan's longtime friend, and the attorney who had prepared all of our estate documents. Thomas welcomed us with a mix of warmth and weary expectation. I had a feeling this would happen, he said, pulling up files on his laptop. I have every document Nathan ever signed. It's all clear, all airtight. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. You're sure they can't win? I asked, still not breathing normally. Not unless you voluntarily sign over assets, he said firmly. And unless you do, they'll only burn money trying. I finally exhaled. Back home, Sophie was coloring in the living room. She looked up as we walked in, concern flickering behind her innocent face. What happened? She asked. I sat beside her, brushing her hair back. Some people are upset because I'm protecting what Daddy left us. But I'm okay. I have Uncle Marcus, I have Thomas, and I have you. She nodded. Do you need me to help? Such a simple question. It nearly undid me. You just need to be you. Remember what Daddy taught us. Remember what's right. She added a red heart to her paper. I think Grandpa's scared. Scared of what? Scared of losing you. But really, he should be scared of losing you because he never loved you the right way, not because of money. I stared at her, 8 years old, and somehow, wiser than most adults I knew. That evening, Marcus and I drafted an email to my father's attorney. Subject line, formal response. No legal grounds for contestation. We attached a scanned copy of Nathan's notarized will, documentation confirming my sole guardianship of Sophie, a handwritten excerpt from Nathan's final letter. Everything I've left behind is for Emily and Sophie, no one else, and a closing statement. Any future coercion or legal intimidation will be forwarded to our legal counsel. We hit send. No hesitation. 3 days later, Olivia emailed me. Not an apology. Just, Dad is heartbroken. Mom can't sleep. You've made enemies out of your own family. I didn't respond. I've learned something. No one is truly family if their love comes with an invoice attached. The next morning, Sophie came down the stairs holding a new drawing. She beamed. I made a plan to protect what Daddy left. At the top of the page in purple marker, plan to protect Daddy's love. Below were 3 hand-drawn shields, one labeled Mom, one labeled Uncle Marcus, and one simply titled Daddy's Words. At the bottom in bright red crayon, she wrote, "I won't let anyone take what Daddy gave us." I pulled her close, pressing my forehead to hers. No more fear, only faith. It was just after midnight when I sat down to write the letter. Sophie was asleep on the couch, one hand still resting on her latest drawing, more hearts, more shields. Her quiet breaths were a rhythm I didn't realize I needed. Marcus was upstairs. The house was silent. And for the first time in weeks, so was my mind. No arguments, no flashbacks, just clarity. I opened my laptop, pulled up a blank email, and wrote the subject line, "To those who have heard only one side." The letter began simply, "To the family I used to believe in. I'm writing this not to create more division, but to finally put the truth where everyone can see it. You've heard rumors. You've heard their version. This is mine." Then I laid it bare. Everything. You weren't there when I called Mom from the hospital after Nathan died. She told me they were in the middle of Olivia's birthday dinner and asked if it could wait until the next day. You weren't there when Dad's first words to me were about Nathan's insurance policy. You didn't see them arrive late to the funeral, complain about the traffic, or whisper through my eulogy. You didn't see them sitting in my house afterward calculating what Nathan was worth. And most of all, you didn't hear what they said when they came to my door 2 weeks later. They asked for 50% of the life insurance, called it fair, justified it with college tuition and birthday gifts. They wanted to take my daughter's future and repackage it as retirement planning. I paused, then typed, "You may think I'm exaggerating. You may think I'm bitter. I'm not. I'm tired. Tired of silence, of swallowing shame that doesn't belong to me, of letting people rewrite my story while I sit still and polite in the margins. I attach Sophie's bill for being a real family. This is the only math that mattered to Nathan's daughter." Then I included a photo of Nathan's handwritten letter, the paragraph where he warned me about my father's prior requests, where he told me never to let guilt override protection. This was written 3 months before he died. He knew. He trusted me to know too, and I do. The final paragraph was a boundary in itself. This letter is not an invitation for debate. It is a closing of doors that needed to be shut long ago. To those who stood by and said nothing, I see you now. To those who called me selfish while trying to profit from Nathan's death, you have no place in our lives until you can speak truth and offer accountability. To those who said nothing because you were afraid, you still have time to choose courage. I send this not out of vengeance, but out of clarity. So the next time someone asks what happened to the good daughter, you'll know she stopped apologizing for surviving. Emily Bennett. I stared at the screen for a long time. My finger hovered over the mouse, and then I hit send. By morning, replies began to pour in. The first was from my Aunt Lisa. "Emily, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I should have asked you. I should have been there." Then Uncle Greg. "They told us you were cutting them off for no reason. This changes everything." Even Olivia sent 2 words. "I'm sorry." No excuses, no defense, just those 2 words. And for once, it was enough. I stepped into the kitchen where sunlight bathed everything in soft gold. Sophie was already awake, eating cereal, barefoot, humming softly. I kissed the top of her head and poured myself coffee. Marcus walked in, stretching. "You sleep at all?" I smiled. I did. He raised an eyebrow. What changed? I looked at Sophie, then at him, then at the rising sun. Everything. Exactly 1 year after Nathan's funeral, we hosted a gathering. Not a memorial, not a second goodbye, something else. We called it the Day of Staying. The idea came from Sophie. She said it should be a day for the people who stayed, not the ones who came for the show. So we invited only those who had earned that space. Marcus, Grace, Julia, Nathan's parents, Brian from college, Aunt Barbara, a few neighbors, a few colleagues, and no one else. The garden behind our house was lit with candles in glass jars. We placed folding chairs in a circle. A long table stood beneath the oak tree, draped in soft cloth, filled with photos of Nathan, some smiling, some blurry, all real. There was no podium, no priest, just memory, intention, and love. Sophie handed out paper hearts with, "I remember when," written on them. Everyone filled them in. Some were silly. I remember when Nathan insisted maple syrup was sacred. Others were deeply quiet. I remember when he stayed late at work just to help me get through a divorce. One was folded into a tiny triangle and handed to me privately. From Julia. I remember how he used to say, "Emily's the real strong one. I just make pancakes." Marcus stood and said, he wasn't perfect, but he never ran, never blamed, never hid. That's what staying looks like. I followed him. I'm not the same person I was a year ago, I told them. I thought losing Nathan would destroy me. And for a while, it did. But what I've learned is this love doesn't stop when someone dies. It just moves into other people, other places, even the cracks we didn't know we had. He's here, in Sophie, in this table, in this breath. I looked around, and I saw no one with a phone out, no one pretending, only people present, exactly as he would have wanted. After most people had left, Marcus came back from the house holding something, a small wooden box. "This came by mail," he said, "addressed to you from Nathan's old friend in Oregon. He said Nathan gave it to him last spring with one instruction. Deliver it if she's still standing a year from now." My hands trembled. Inside the box was a USB drive, labeled in Nathan's handwriting, "If you're still standing." That night after Sophie went to bed, I sat alone in the quiet. I lit a candle, plugged the drive into my laptop. A video file opened, and there he was, Nathan, alive on the screen. Hair tousled, hoodie worn, eyes tired, smile unwavering. He waved awkwardly. "Hey, so if you're watching this, it means you made it a year, which means you've done something extraordinary. You kept living." He laughed softly. "I know I said not to be dramatic in life, but I'm going to be dramatic now, okay? Because this is the part of life where I can't improvise anymore. So I wrote this part down. You are strong in ways I never was. You are the reason Sophie will grow up knowing what it means to love deeply and fiercely. You are the story I always wanted to be part of. Don't let grief erase joy. Don't let silence become habit. Don't let them rewrite who you are. You are fire. You are the mother. You are the shelter." He paused, wiped his eyes. "Tell Sophie I dance like a robot in heaven. Tell her I still don't like cilantro." And then one final whisper. "Thank you for staying." The screen went black. I didn't cry. Not the way I expected. I felt full. Like the ache had turned into something I could hold without it breaking me. The next morning I found Sophie on the porch watching birds. She looked up and smiled. "Oh, do you think Daddy saw the party?" I sat beside her. I think he helped plan it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. I made one more list. I unfolded it. Things that didn't die. Daddy's laugh. Mommy's hugs. Maple syrup jokes. My bravery. Our story.